It's almost as if Trump had ESP. Folks, this is almost freaky. This is Trump from 2020 on the campaign trail predicting two things that happened yesterday. If Biden was elected, they sounded absurd at the time. And then yesterday, they happened simultaneously. $7 a gallon gas, all-time high, never seen before gas prices, and that the Democrats, in response to the gas price crisis they created, would propose going entirely to clean energy, to electric vehicles. Damn, listen.
We have more oil than anybody, okay? And it's an incredible thing that it's happened over the last few years, a lot of great things, and you're paying, what, $2 a gallon for your gasoline? That's okay. You know what that's like? That's like a tax cut. That's bigger than a tax cut. If Biden got in, you'd be paying $7, $8, $9. Then they say, get rid of your car.
And that's exactly what happened yesterday.
Prices at some local gas stations, they're way above the average. Well, across the street from the Beverly Center, one of the most expensive places in L.A., drivers are paying this, nearly $7 for regular unleaded, nearly $8 for premium. Drivers said they were surprised and not in a good way.
Simultaneously, exactly as Trump predicted. Once the oil prices, the Democrats had astroturfed and created deliberately through their policies hit, and they had the cover of Putin to blame them on. They did exactly what Trump said they would do once we hit $7. And it's a record $4.17 across the country on average, the highest ever. What happened? Simultaneously, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary, and Joe Biden came out and said, well, we're going to go to all electric vehicles, an all green energy economy.
It should motivate us to accelerate the transition to clean energy, transforming our economy to run on electric vehicles powered by clean energy, with tax credits to help American families winterize their homes and use less energy. That will help. And if we do what we can, it will mean that no one has to worry about the price of the gas pump.
Okay, what just happened here? Democrats deliberately skyrocketed the oil price to the highest ever. In a video that just surfaced from February 28th, our Energy Secretary, Jennifer Granholm, explained this is the goal. This is the policy of the Biden administration, a complete transition away from fossil fuels. This was just February 28th. Notice she does not mention Putin.
We're working through an energy transition. And the reality is we have to take some time to get off of oil and gas. We recognize this. This is a transition.
This has been a year-long process of locking up drilling on federal land that produces about 25% of our oil, slowing it down, making it hard to get loans, making sure there aren't pipelines to move it all, pausing the drilling leases, which he's in court fighting over with right now. So as long as they're fighting, nobody is going to go after the active leases. They don't know who's going to win. What they did was take 1.5 million barrels off the world market. What did that do? It still leaves us as the world's largest producer of oil. But here's the key difference. The cushion at the top of the market that settles who sets the prices is 1.5 to 2 million barrels. When that oil is on the market from us, when we're producing around 13 million barrels a day, we set the prices, not OPEC and Russia. It's actually more the mom and pop frackers in Texas who set them. Pull that oil off the market, we're still the world's largest oil producer by a hair, but OPEC and Putin set the prices. It's the difference between a glut, and a surplus, and a tight market. The Democrats knew exactly how much to pull off the market to put Putin and OPEC back in the driver's seat, and they knew in a tight market, what happens? Prices will go through the roof. Phase 2 was accomplished today. We put a boycott on Russian oil. We don't buy any, but we don't replace it with anything. We don't increase production to compensate for it. That guarantees that the oil price will skyrocket. This is the whole reason, and if you listen to last week's Battleground America podcast, you know the Democrats deliberately astroturfed this war, got us into this war, provoked the war with Putin, pulled the sanctions off so Putin could go into Ukraine. They did everything they could to engineer this war deliberately, including doing the one thing Putin warned us in 2008 would cause an invasion. Declare we intended to support NATO status for Ukraine. So this is the Democrats deliberately greenlighting. As I've explained, I'm not going to go back into it. If you want to understand it, you can listen to the Battleground podcast before this one. This is the Democrats deliberately greenlighting the invasion of Ukraine as cover to blame Putin for the escalating oil prices that they want, that they created. Here is a critical part of the speech Biden gave today. He flat out lied when he said that his administration had hit an all-time high in oil production. That's simply not true. And Fox News reporter David Asman fact-checked him for it.
Well, he was very clear in making the same misstatements that Jen Psaki did, saying that we have the highest oil production ever right now. Anybody can look it up on the website. EIA, it's the official energy statistics. In December 2019, we were producing 12.9 million barrels of oil a day. In December 2021, we were producing 11.5 million barrels a day. It's a 1.5 million barrel per day drop since December 2019 at the end of the Trump administration. The fact is we are not producing as much oil as we could, and we could ramp up our oil production to easily replace what we're not getting from Russia.
Well, and that's critical to know because the facts matter here.
Yeah.
Like, our enemies look at that and they know the truth. Venezuela knows, oh, my goodness, we can do a little bit of a jig today because America's going to buy some oil from us. I don't know. Maybe Iran's thinking the same thing.
Well,
and look, the Saudis are over there. They're listening to the president get ready to beg for more release from OPEC.
And what are the Chinese thinking? I think the Chinese are thinking, oh, boy, we get to sneak in some Russian oil because we can go under the radar, get the oil in there at a discount. While Americans are spending a fortune more on oil, we get oil cheaper here by dealing with the Russians.
Bingo. Now notice, we're standing all alone. The Europeans are gone. The Chancellor of Germany announced they simply couldn't get by without Russian oil and natural gas, so they just tapped out. Europe just tapped out. They're not doing this, just us. In fact, France spoke positively about Russia today, too. What are they doing? Well, a funny other thing happened today. We're going to get into this later in the week, okay? I'm just going to touch on it because you need to know. There was a second record broken in the last 24 hours. The first was for oil prices on average in America, $4.17. Never seen that before. What was the second one? Wheat prices, world record. Europe knows they're going to need to buy Russian wheat and Ukraine wheat, which Russia now controls. See where this is going? Want a further idea of where this is going? Okay. Remember, and you might have heard this if you watch the news, how China and Russia coordinated it so that the invasion of Ukraine would not begin until after the Olympics? It wasn't the only thing they coordinated. Yep, Russia and China have pulled over half the world's fertilizer off the market. They did that this fall as they were planning the Ukraine invasion. Our planning season starts in a few weeks, and we're over a barrel. Oh, and you should know this too. Check out this headline from Data Watch, December 23rd, 2021. China hoards over half the world's grain, pushing up global prices. Who else do we need? If we want to eat food, Russia and Ukraine. That's who we need. See where this is going? They are going to skyrocket inflation through the roof. But before we get to that, because we're going to have plenty of time to cover that before it hits the markets in about a month to 6 weeks, you're going to really see it at the grocery store. But we're going to do something else first here because I want to do the oil. Now that we are at a record high, they are free to escalate it as high as they want to go. And it will be much, much higher. The price of oil will translate to record high gas prices. That in turn will further jack up the inflation that you're seeing on food and everything. They are literally deliberately spitting us toward a crisis, all while deliberately escalating the war in Ukraine in order to keep it going. I'll hit on that in a minute, but first I want to get back to the lie that Biden told and the clever, really clever way that he did it. He claimed, and watch the sleight of hand here, that he produced more oil than Trump. But notice what years he does it in. He says, I produced more oil than Trump did in his first year, in my first year. Well, of course he did, because those were Obama's numbers. It took Trump a while to ramp up the drilling on federal lands. So in what month was the most oil produced in the United States of America ever? That was Trump in November of 2019, 12,966 barrels. It would soften up a little bit in 2020 because of COVID. There was less demand for oil, and so they scaled back a bit. It is absurd for Biden to claim that he has hit an all-time high in oil production. Simply a joke. Meanwhile, while the Europeans smartly tap out, understanding that going to economic war with Putin in China could mean destruction. For us, it's almost certain destruction of our currency. But that's for another podcast. Let's focus on oil prices. The Europeans, understanding reality, have tapped out. They're going to buy Russia's stuff. So what are we doing? We are doing three things. Deliberately and unnecessarily escalating the war, avoiding the one thing that would cause peace, and of course, trying to up the body count in Ukraine among the innocent civilians. Wait, what? Yup, that's exactly what we're doing. Because Putin has said giving planes is a near provocation to war. Europe has already tapped out of that. They're not going to do that. But we are. Once again, the only government or former government official telling the American people the truth is Army Colonel Douglas McGregor. He was on Tucker last night. Here's the important part.
We're in a very dangerous position right now. We have a president of the United States who wants Ukrainian pilots to come to Poland, climb into fighter jets on the ground in Poland, and then fly them into Ukraine to join the fight against the Russians. He made a very good decision about the no-fly zone. He needs to reverse this decision immediately. This is the first decisive step across the line into what could make us a co-belligerent in the war in Ukraine. Moscow will not take this lightly. They have exercised great restraint towards us, even though we have continued to pile great quantities of military equipment into the people that they are fighting. But this is a step too far. And there are a whole range of responses, from tactical ballistic missiles and cruise missiles to destroy all the airports and all the airfields in Poland, or frankly anywhere else in Europe where we have U.S. aircraft potentially, all the way up to a nuclear strike. The good news is that Putin will not launch a nuclear strike unless we use one, and I can't imagine the president doing that. But nevertheless, it's a danger, and this seems to escape everybody's attention. The other point that's very important about the Russians: for the Russians, this is an existential question. They will not allow Ukraine to join NATO or any other alliance that is aimed at Russia. They want a non-aligned, neutral Ukraine. That is the first condition, and it's one that we should accept. We should be de-escalating this, not escalating it.
That's Army Colonel Douglas McGregor, against whom you've heard our elites rage in recent days. That's because he keeps telling the American people the truth. There is a third way, a neutral Ukraine. But instead, our elites, who are stone cold evil, continue to push for the one thing that keeps getting Ukrainian citizens killed, because they want to escalate and prolong this war. They keep pushing for NATO membership and NATO action on behalf of Ukraine. What you're watching here is sheer, unadulterated madness. Practically, potentially, economically suicidal situation on the part of America. We are in a desperate inflationary situation. We absolutely need the petrodollar to stay where it is. What does that mean? We need Russia and China and every other country in the world to continue buying their energy and their commodities in dollars. If that stops right now with us $30 trillion in debt, we are done. The dollar is done. The economy is done. And the Democrats are willing to risk all of that just to jack gas prices through the roof so they can get their all-electric vehicle economy. Either that or they want to crash the dollar too. You can debate what they want to do. There's signs either way. But here's the thing. The Europeans aren't that stupid. They know they need to eat, and they know they need energy, and they have no interest, like we do, in deliberately escalating the prices. Colonel McGregor explains that too. Both us trying deliberately to escalate this war when we can end it by suing for peace with a neutral Ukraine, which we would support, when we won't do that. Take a listen to McGregor describe what we're doing with Russia.
I do think the plan is to prolong the fighting. The Germans have already made it very clear that they're going to continue to buy energy and food from Russia. So will other European states. The sanctions, as you rightly point out, will do a lot of damage to us. They're not going to make much difference to Russia. China will stand with Russia. It knows it has to. Russia has an abundance of food and energy. China will take it all. Russia will not suffer as a result of our sanctions. In fact, it may break down the financial system that we have set up to punish everyone in the world we don't like.
And that financial system is the one that transacts almost entirely in dollars, keeping our dollar inflated. Right now, keeping it afloat as it's on the skids. This is the source of Russia's power. It doesn't matter that the Russian economy itself is small. It projects its power through what it sells, and we need them to sell it in dollars. And right now, the Democrats are doing everything they can to make sure to poke the bear, to make sure to keep gasoline prices artificially high, and maybe even to make sure that the sale of all of those commodities by Russia and China in dollars ends. It'll be the end of the country as you know it. Pray it doesn't get that far. Pray someone in Washington gets some sense before that happens.